Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Just to continue with these three-part series of the stories of the salaf, and we do this so that we gain our attention upon the situation and the biographies of the people before us, the pious people before us, so that we may take inspiration from their seerah, from their lives, from their actions and their conducts, and how they were in relation towards the deen and in relation towards the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how they implemented it within their lives, so that we may emulate from them and we may take inspiration from their lives and make us not only love them for the sake of Allah because of their practice in the religion, but also we take from them so that we may become like them, and so that we may reach a certain status like they reached their status with Allah within the religion. And yesterday the Shaykh covered the story of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and today we will cover also a significant figure within Islam and from the Salaf. First of all, we start off with a background, and this was way before his time, and it was during the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu. And Umar ibn Khattab, what he used to do and what was his custom, which he sort of introduced, was something called asas. He used to do a night patrol. And normally when you're a leader, you probably pick someone or appoint someone to do that, a patrol. But he used to do this personally. He used to go out in the night and used to make sure that the situation was okay. If anyone needed help, even this is during the night, so after Isha, if anyone needed help, he'll help them. And if anyone was causing trouble, then he'll sort it out. And he used to do this personally. He didn't even appoint anyone. So he would be either by himself or with his servant or something. And this is very famous, and there are many incidents and occurrences that happened during his time whilst doing these night patrols. And you can look at the seerah of the Umar ibn Khattab, which I encourage everyone to do, and you can see many wonderful occurrences that happened during that time. And one of these times, he did a night patrol, and he was probably tired, and he was leaning against a wall or a house. And he overheard a conversation between two women, a daughter and a mother. And the mother was saying to the daughter, increase the milk or the yogurt with water, so that it'll increase the quantity of it, but the quality would then decrease. Then the daughter said, Umar ibn Khattab, the Amir, he forbade us from doing this. And then the mother was saying, but Umar is not here. And the daughter replied, Umar is not here, but what about the Rabb of Umar, the Lord of Umar? And it was at this point Umar realized that this daughter, she was a pious and God-fearing woman. So he went back and he asked his sons, who's not married. One of them said, I wasn't married. And then he asked about the availability of the woman, and then he got the woman married to one of his sons. And it just shows that when you are looking to get married, and when a father or a parent is looking to marry off one of his sons or daughters, the first thing that should come to your mind is piety and taqwa. And this is why a woman is married. There's four reasons why a woman is married. It's wealth, status, lineage, and beauty, and the religion. And the Prophet ﷺ said, فَضْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ, be successful with the one with the religion. So when someone is looking to get married, or when a parent is looking for their child to get married, the first thing, the top criteria should be the religion. And this is why when Umar realized this, he went straight this is a woman which I would want my children to get married to. And the Prophet ﷺ said, الدنيا كلها متاع وخير متاع الدنيا المرأة الصالحة. The world is enjoyment and a means, and the best of these means and enjoyment is a pious woman. so this should be the first thing when a person is looking for a pious spouse and relationship. And so Umar also had this, as we should all have the same mentality. And from this relationship and this marriage, this man whom we're going to be talking about came from. So from this lineage, this pious lineage, Umar ibn al-Khattab, and then this woman, this pious woman, came this man I'm going to talk about. And this man, he became Amir of all the Muslims. He became Amir of the Muslim Ummah. And at that time, Islam was at the height of its power. It was the biggest empire in the world. And he became Amir. And if you look in the Quran, Allah alluded to the fact that if someone wanted to be successful as a leader, then you would have two things, ilm and physicality and capability. In the story of Talut and Jalut, when the Bani Israel, they asked for a king, Allah picked Talut. And this is he picked him not because of wealth, because Bani Israel, they said, we are more rightful of this kingdom. وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. And he was not even given wealth. They said, like, he doesn't even have any wealth. But what did the Nabi say to them? إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاهُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَزَادَهُ بَسْطَةً فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالْجِسْمِ. That Allah has chosen him over you, and He has increased him in abundance in what? Knowledge and bodily strength. So mentality and physicality, Allah chose him. But the first thing Allah said, that He gave him ilm. And to be a successful leader and a successful, responsible individual over certain people is to have knowledge. And this particular person, Umar ibn Abdil Azeez, he had knowledge. When he was young, he was given to study and he memorized the Quran, and he was in an environment where he learnt adab, where he learnt and he sought knowledge and hadith from the scholars. And when he became Khalifa and he had all this, the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah will send a man, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْعَثُ لِي هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ عَلَى رَأْسِ كُلِّ مِئَةِ سَنَةٍ مَنْ يُجَدِّدُ لَهَا دِينَهَا. That He will send someone for this ummah every 100 years, one who will renew the religion. And Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, he said, the first mujaddid of this ummah was Umar ibn Abdil Azeez, the one who rectified the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, called the people back to the sunnah, who took away the bid'ah during that time, and the lavishness and the vain activities during that time, was Umar ibn Abdil Azeez. And Sufyan al-Thawri, he said, and when we mention Khulafa al-Rashidun, we think of the four. We think of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman and Ali, and that's correct. And Sufyan al-Thawri said there are five. He mentioned them four, and then he said the fifth one is Umar ibn Abdil Azeez. And many scholars also followed him in saying that. Not because he was straight after them in terms of succession, because there became many rulers after the four, but because of his piety, because of his justice, because of his selflessness for the ummah, because he put the ummah first before his own needs and his own family's needs, as we will see. And this is why many scholars have categorized him as also part of Khulafa Rashidun. And he used to have, when he became Amir, and he didn't want this, he didn't want leadership. And as someone who is pious and who is God-fearing, you do not want leadership. And the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't give normally people leadership when they ask for it. But when leadership is told for them or was given to them, they would reluctantly take it, and then Allah will aid them. Whereas someone who asks for leadership and who wants and craves leadership and then is given it, then he will be up to him. Like Allah will not aid him. rather it will be upon himself. Whereas someone who doesn't want it, but then it is thrust upon him, like Umar ibn Abdil Azeez, then Allah will aid him with it. And at the time, it was Sulaiman ibn Abdul Malik who was the Khalifa, and it was suggested to him to make Umar ibn Abdul Azeez the Khalifa, the Amir. And then when it was said to him, he said, I didn't want it. And it was put upon him, and he reluctantly accepted it. When he made his first speech, he said that I did not want this. It was put upon me. I am just a man from the believers. Like when the funeral happened, they had the caravan and the entourage like to take him, because now he's Khalifa, now he has to have this crowd with him. But he said, what is this? And he said, this is what the Khalifa has. He said, no, I don't want any of this. And then he said, just give me my animal that I used to ride. And they got him his animal, and he went. And then later on when he did the khutbah, he did to announce himself on the minbar, he said that I am just a man like you. I did not want this. And then he actually tried to relinquish it, and he said that I can relieve you of this. And then they said, no, we want you. Because they knew of his piety, they knew of his because before that, he was governor of Medina. He was made governor of Medina by a previous Khalifa. And during that time, there was a man called Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. And he used to be a very big oppressor. He used to commit so many atrocities against the Muslims. And so in Iraq, which Hajjaj was looking over, many Muslims, they came and they fled to Medina, which at the time, Umar ibn Abdil Azeez was governor. And he gave them refuge. And then he gave a letter to Walid ibn Abdul Malik, who was the Khalifa at the time, that this is what Hajjaj is doing, so and so. The Hajjaj heard of this and he didn't like it. And then he actually pressurized the Khalifa, the Amir, to depose Umar ibn Abdul Azeez from the governorship. And then he took him away. But even before Khilafah, he was known to be just, he was known to be fair, he was known to be kind. And so the people knew of this. So when he became Khalifa and the Amir, this is what was the case, and people knew this. And so even though he didn't want to, the people put it upon him. And so he said, the people, whoever obeys Allah, then you have to obey him. And whoever disobeys Allah, then there is no obligation upon him. Whereas if I obey Allah, then you must obey me. And if I don't obey Allah, then you have no obligation to obey me. And when he became Khalifa, the first thing he did was to rectify and reform the whole tradition. Because at that time, Banu Umayyah, what they used to do is obviously when they became Khalifa, they would have succession that their direct descendants or their brothers will become the Khalifa, and then they'll give governorship and grants and benefits to their families. So this was from Baytul Mal, this was from the treasury of the Muslims, and he was not going to allow this. And so he took all this wealth and these grants and benefits, and he just took it away from them and said, this is the wealth of the believers, it's not for you. And they were angry, but they knew the justice of Umar ibn Abdil Azeez, and they couldn't do anything. He said to his wife, who was not only a sister of 3 Khalifas, she was also a daughter of a Khalifa. And he said to her that she had like jewelry. And he said to her that he knew that this was not originally from their own wealth, this was from Baytul Mal. He said, if you do not return this, like he gave her 2 choices. You either return this to Baytul Mal, or you go back to your family, meaning that I don't want anything to do with you. And obviously, as her wife, she knew how he was. And so she didn't want this. And so rather, she said, I'm going to give away the jewelry and I'll stay with you. Because she knew the justice and the fairness of her husband. And so this is what he did, not only to his wife, but to his family and all those who were asking for state benefits and grants. Because this was a privilege for Banu Umayyah. They were part of the Khilafah industry, and so they took the wealth from Baytul Mal, but he totally took away all that from them. And he relinquished that benefits from them, and he put the rights of the people over the rights of, it was even the rights of his family. And what he used to do, he used to accompany himself with scholars every time. So he'll have a group of scholars with him, and they will remind him of al-akhirah, they will remind him of the deen, they will have scholarly discussions, they will remind him of death. Like there would be a group after Isha, and they would remind each other, and they would remind him about death. So he used to surround himself with scholars, and amongst them most prominently Sa'id ibn Musayyib, Urwa ibn Zubair, and these are the fuqaha of Medina. And he used to have Ibn Shihab, al-Zuhri, all of these guys around him. And so a leader, you should know that they should always have people of ilm, people of taqwa around them, and that's what he had. And he wasn't someone that wasn't knowledgeable either. He was also a scholar, a mujtahid in his own right, and he was a student of knowledge. Fathul Bari, Ibn Hajar, he said that the first to write hadith was Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, and this was on the order of Umar ibn Abdil Azeez. So Umar ibn Abdil Azeez told Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, and he told Abu Bakr al-Hazm to gather and compile a hadith so that it's not lost. So to compile it in one compilation. And so it was said that he was the first one to compile it all together, or assemble as many as they could in one book. And al-Bukhari also says this as well. And so you can see that a leader, when he leads, he must lead with knowledge first and foremost, and he must have with his companionship people of knowledge, and not people of desires, and not people who are craving wealth, not people who are craving leadership, but those who are craving al-akhirah, those who are craving the reality. And the only way to do that is to choose those who have knowledge and those who have taqwa. And some of the rulings and the reforms that he did, you know, Banu Umayyah, they used to say slander and say stuff about Ali radiallahu anhu in their sermons. So he stopped that. So he stopped all these bid'ah, he stopped all these evil, and he said, you cannot say this. And in fact, he told them to say good about them. And then he said, say stuff like the ayah, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan wa ita'i dhil qurba. And this actual tradition continues till this day, this tradition of saying this ayah. And he was very strict on zakah. Just like Abu Bakr before him, he was very strict on zakah. He wanted every person who had a right for zakah to get it, and he wanted everyone who had a right upon them to give zakah to give it. And they consistently gave zakah, and there was a very persistent and consistent way of giving zakah, so much so that there was a time when the zakah collector would go and try to look for people who would get zakah, and there wouldn't be any. So barakah and justice became so prevalent that there was no people who would accept zakah. People became rich because of the justice, because of the fairness, because of the implementation of Umar ibn Abdil Azeez of the religion. And he made many calls and ijtihad and rulings, and some of them was, one of them was Ibn Umar, he mentioned a hadith. So Nafi', who was a student and a freed slave of Ibn Umar, he said to him the hadith that Ibn Umar said, in the battle of Uhud I was 14 and I was not allowed to fight. And then in the battle of Khandaq I was 15, then I was allowed to fight. Then Umar ibn Abdil Azeez, he heard this and he said, okay, from now on, anyone who's 15, then he is allowed to fight and you'll give them wages. And this is the difference between someone who is a child and someone who was a man. And you will see in some books of fiqh, the ulama saying that if a person whose signs has not become apparent, then 15 is the age of puberty, is the age of which the person becomes a man. And this hukam could come from this statement of Umar ibn Abdil Azeez. And his justice and fairness spread throughout the whole land because of his ilm. And you cannot have justice, and you cannot have fairness, and you cannot have taqwa and piety except with knowledge. So he had an emphasis on knowledge. And we know there are 7 people, سَبْعَةٌ يُظِلُّهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي ظِلِّهِ يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّهُ. That in the day of resurrection, in the day where there will be no shade except the shade of Allah, Allah will shade 7. And the first one is Imamun Adil, the just leader. And because of his reformation and his actions, you could see he would be from that category. And his justice was so spread out and prevalent that the Bedouins, they would say, who is the leader now? Who is the righteous leader? Because they would see from their sheep that a wolf would not attack it. There would be a wolf amongst their sheep and it will not even attack it. And then it would be said to a Bedouin, why is it like that? And they would say, if the head is correct, then the whole body follows it. So he was saying that basically the righteousness of the Khalifa, the righteousness of the leader became so prevalent that even the animals, they didn't even attack one another. And then when an incident happened where the wolf did attack the sheep, then the Bedouin would say, that righteous man has passed away. And that occurred as well. And in a riwayah in Ahmad, there was a sack of wheat, seeds and grain. And within that sack, there was wheat grain that was as big as a date seed. And it was written on that sack, هذه أيام العدل. This was during the days of justice, meaning the days of Umar ibn Abdil Azeez. So because of his knowledge and his taqwa and his justice and his fairness, even the non-Muslims, they used to refer to him as someone who was just. And it was said that they cried upon his death. And in his khilafah, they didn't expand. In fact, he sort of reduced the army, because he didn't want it to overspill. He wanted to focus on the Muslims at that time, and he wanted to make sure everyone was dealt with and everyone was given their right. And this is why, the zakah, when they went around, they couldn't find any, because he wanted to make sure everyone was okay. Because if you obviously expand more and more, then they're going to have to deal with more people. But he wanted to deal with those who were already there. And so the non-Muslims, when they would hear him passing away, and those before him passing away, they would feel sad and remorse. And during when he was passing away, because of when I mentioned that he took away the benefits of his family, the relatives of Banu Umayyah who were used to all this, this luxury and this lavishness, it was said that they plotted to kill him. So they ordered a slave of his to poison his food. And then he got poisoned and he died because of this. And he said to the servant, did you poison me? And who ordered you, how much did they pay you? Because he knew who did it. How much did they pay you? And he said 1,000 dirham or dinar, I can't recall. And then he said, put this back to Baytul Mal, because it's a haram for you, and then you are free. So he freed this person. He didn't take qisas from this person. And he passed away after this at the age of 39. And how long do you think his khilafah was? All this happened, like zakat, when people, everyone was rich, no one was poor during his time. How long did this happen? It was very short. It was similar to the reign of Abu Bakr, 2 years and 5 months. All this happened, the Reformation, everything, the justice and fairness. Only in that time period, he did all of this. And justice became so much that the food was this big when it's supposed to be this big. Animals didn't eat each other. The shepherd didn't worry about his sheep or his flock. And the believers, they would go out and they would not fear anything. And everyone was rich. Everyone was blessed because of the piety and the justice of the leader is spread throughout everyone. And so the barakah spread. And after this, the Umayyad Khilafah didn't last too long. After this, a couple of decades, they were gone. Then it was Abbasiyah. Then it was another Khilafah later on. And it shows the importance of knowledge and the importance of having taqwa and being just. And how, when you're a responsible person, and when you're a leader, you are the first standard. So if you are correct, then those who are below you will most likely be correct. If you are not correct and you are evil, then those below you will probably most likely be evil. So we leave it at that. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.